Welcome to Inspirational Journeys, everyone. My name is Ann Harrison, and today we are here to celebrate, as you are hearing this, the book launch of The Conjurer's Curse by Stephanie Cotta. Welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Hello, I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much, and I'm excited to have you. Sorry about that. I had to mute for a second. So, Stephanie, why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners and the viewers?
All right, well, my name is Stephanie Cotta, and I am a young adult and adult fantasy writer. I hail from Southern Oregon, and I just recently got married, so there's been some big changes in my life. But I'm super excited for my debut book to be coming out and for all of the readers to be able to read it.
Oh, wow, this is your debut. I was going to ask you that. So, what inspired you to become a writer?
Um, I think I started writing back in 2013. A good friend of mine who was a pastor, he loved to just talk to me after church about Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and all nerdy fantasy things. And he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, you've read so much fantasy books. Why don't you write your own?" And it's kind of the first time someone kind of put that nudge in me. And I thought maybe I should. And little did he know that I'd actually kind of written like a couple of pages of the start of a fantasy story, but I did nothing with it. So I went home that night and just kind of started writing. I picked up where I'd left off and just went and didn't stop. So 8 years later, I now have the first book that's getting published.
Yep. And it will be um it's an awesome book. I'm telling you that. So what was the inspiration behind The Conjurer's Curse?
So twofold. I have been trying to pitch and query one of my adult fantasy stories, and I really wasn't getting any traction. And I think it's easy to go through all the reasons why, an agent is passing on your story. And as I do write epic fantasy, my books tend to have a longer word count. So I kind of was getting hooked on this idea that maybe my book was too long. So I thought maybe I should write a new story and have it be young adult. So that kind of was the first idea that maybe I should try something else. And then at the same time, this was January of 2021. So that was during COVID. And I'm sure, like a lot of people, was shut in, couldn't go out, couldn't go do fun things. And I kind of was getting a little discouraged by the social distancing and how certain people were kind of acting like everyone was carrying the plague. So
Oh, yeah.
I had a personal experience that just really rubbed me the wrong way. I got really singled out and kind of treated pretty bad for doing nothing wrong, just like, oh, so I went home that day just kind of upset, like this is killing our society. I hate that everybody feels like we're carrying a plague. So that night I thought, what if a teenage boy was cursed? That if he was near anybody, they would slowly die around him.
Oh, yeah.
That's honestly where the premise came from. I had such a like visceral reaction to someone treating me awful that I could possibly kill them. That I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna write a story about this. And I'm gonna make it an adventure because I needed to go on an adventure with COVID and all that, just happening, being shut in. And I thought I want to be like Bilbo. I love The Hobbit. So let's go on a journey, and I'm gonna figure out where this character is gonna go, and let's make it fantastical. Let's put him through a bunch of different fantastical things and kind of see what happens from there.
Throw some mystery in there.
Yeah, so that's how the premise kind of came about.
Wow. That was definitely yeah. I've noticed that when you said The Hobbit, I'm like, yep, you and Jen, I know y'all jived because she loves The Hobbit too. Um, but so what was your process like? Did you outline it or were you just a pantser all the way?
I am such a pantser. I don't outline. Honestly, an outline literally could be one sentence at the top of a chapter. It says scene, so and so is there, this happens and it'll end with the next step. Like literally, if I outline, that's the extent of it.
Very, very bare bones.
Yeah, very, very bare bones. So as I said, that night I had kind of got this idea for a story. So I sat up that morning and I got dialogue was just coming through my head of like, this kid is cursed, and someone's telling him you're cursed, you have to leave the village. We've all seen it, we've recognized the signs, and my character's freaking out, but he has to leave. So I just really went through that and I didn't map out stuff, but I'm like, okay, he's got to leave the village. He needs to get on a boat. He needs to journey across the sea, and then we'll come to someplace new. And I put the story in kind of my adult fantasy book, so it was easy to just jump right into this world I've already created.
Mhm.
So certain places had already been established in my mind, but I also wanted to have some new environments and new places that I could explore in my world. So that's kind of how I put Rowan in some familiar places and then new stuff. So that was fun for me. But
I like that travel app. Oh, sorry.
yeah. So I just kind of made it up, and then I'd get to a place where, all right, let's sit back, figure out my plot.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how it is. I'll just go with what inspires me, and then I'll take a step back and kind of brainstorm some things out and then just keep going.
Yep.
But it's not really an outline at all.
Because I feel like, when we write books that we really want to publish, I think we gotta write the messy stuff first, because that's God's way of laying the groundwork
Mhm.
for the good stuff. What are your thoughts on
Well,
that?
I do agree. And oftentimes, like in my own writing, I feel like I was prodded by the Lord. So when I did say that I felt I needed to write a young adult book, like that was never on my mind. But I felt very strongly like, no, this is what you need to do, and you needed to devote all your time and energy into this new story. I was still querying the adult fantasy book, but it gave me an outlet to still be creative on something new. And once I finished the book, I felt like I had something really special. So I instantly sent it out to people like, hey, I need beta readers. And all these people wanted to read it, like um, friends and family. And then went through that process of changing some stuff. And then eventually I found a publisher, and that's a whole story in and of itself that we might touch on later. So,
Well, why don't we touch on that actually?
so I know you had Ashley White on, and
Yep.
her and I were basically just buddies as we were trying to get my book and her book a publisher. So we had done a Twitter pitching contest, and Jen from Monarch had actually liked Ashley's book, The Impossible Girl. And, I was super excited for her. I'm like, way to go. And then she told me, hey, Monarch is also looking for books. So why don't you send your book in? And I think I hesitated for maybe 2 weeks. I just wasn't certain, I was currying agents and that route, and I got so many rejection letters. But I went to the Monarch website and I thought, this is too good to be true. Like, there is no way that there's a publisher out there that I just totally jived with her message. So I eventually just thought, all right, I'm going to do it. Ashley kind of even texted me like, have you sent your manuscript yet? And I said, okay, I'm doing it today.
That's a God thing.
So I sent it in, and I got a message back from Jen so quick that she then wanted the full manuscript. So I was so excited. That was the first time anyone had given me feedback that they were, loving the character and they wanted to know more. And after Jen read through the whole story, there was just a few things I needed to tweak, but she wanted it. And now we're here, and I'm so excited that I'm with Monarch. It's a dream come true, and my story's in the best of hands.
Yep. And I when I read it, I'm like, yes, this was one I could see, I actually loved it. And Jen and I actually talked about this because I was on the way either going to get Sharon or taking her back, that weekend I was reading it, and I'm like, okay, so, and I wasn't able to make it to our her Writing Wars for Jesus boot camp that I'm a part of, her Patreon group, and so I wasn't able to make it that morning because, well, my twin nieces were with us at the time, and so I called Jen. I said, okay, so and I don't want to spoil it. In the Conjurer's Curse, it's sad that that everybody he's around dies because of this curse. And I'm like, I want him to break this curse. I don't want to spoil it. She's like, oh, so you're invested. I said, yeah. I said, Adalcar is not a very good, he's not, he's a character you love to hate. And you got and I may botch this, but Acheron.
Yeah, you can. I say Akron, but I would
Akron.
love to hear other
Okay.
people pronounce my characters' names because I don't feel like there's a right or wrong way. It's
Yeah.
how it sounds to you.
Acheron. Yeah. Oh, but that aunt, Zamora, I think her name is.
Yeah.
Oh, she's I don't want to spoil it, but she's a character. She was a piece of work.
An interesting lady.
Yes,
I
very.
think all characters are pieces of work.
Oh yeah, but she was
Very
definitely what
interesting.
I'd call a piece of work. Full of tricks.
Of course, yes.
Full of tricks, yeah. So anyway, and yeah, so if you haven't read it, well, by the time you're hearing this, it will have already launched. So, and if you haven't I have to be careful what I'm saying because I'm gonna launch this after the book launch, because I know Jen's gonna do a party for this. But at any rate, so all I can say is you gotta go get this book if you love young adult fantasy, the clean, edgy type of fiction. And fantasy can be edgy too, but if you love young adult fantasy, you gotta go get this book. Anyway, so any tips or advice you want to leave for the listeners and viewers?
Well, I'll say for listeners and who are interested in becoming writers, because I know I get a lot of young people that come up to me asking like how do they start, how do they become a writer, and I think the simple advice is just you have to start writing.
Yep.
And that's exactly what I did, and it took somebody to actually just tell me you've got the knowledge, you've got all the resources and the creativity to do it, so just start. And don't worry about it being perfect. As you said, the first drafts are going to be messy. It's a learning process. You're going to figure it out as you go. I also encourage people to read a lot. I read so much. My introduction to fantasy was Star Wars. I could not get enough Star Wars books. And it really just helped inspire my imagination and to realize you can write from so many different point of views, and that's the beauty and fun of characters. So write what you want to read, pretty much. If you don't see that story out there that you want to read, write it, and don't give up, because you never know, one day it could be a published novel.
I don't know if you want, since we are going to put this on YouTube, if you want to do the, as Jen likes to call it, the ooh-ah, the show off the book moment.
Yes, because I have it here. Yeah, well, here it is, The Conjurer's Curse.
Wow, yep, you got to go out and get it.
Yeah.
So, so where can people find you online?
I am on Facebook and Instagram, TikTok. I have a website. The easiest way to find me is Linktree, Stephanie Cotta. That will have all of my socials. So I think that's the easiest way to find me.
Okay. Yeah, I know Jen's all about the Linktree.
No, she encouraged all of us to get one, and I love it. It's just a great place.
I need to do that.
Everything you could want, and then even more fun little things to explore, like Pinterest boards and
oh my gosh,
Spotify playlists for my writing. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay, cool. Yeah. So is there, if you could think of one takeaway, one challenge that well, I call it a call to action. It could be a challenge or a resource. If you could think of one thing you want the listeners and viewers to walk away with today, what would that be?
just to be creative and in whatever that is. I started as an artist. I had no plans to be a writer. I'll just say that I didn't dream of being a writer when I was, a younger girl. I was going to be an artist, and you just never know where your creative pursuits will lead you, And I thought I was going to be a children's book illustrator. I had no plans to write, and then of course God just comes up and says, "Hey, actually, I'm gonna pull you this direction and just take you on a wild ride." And you know,
Writing can be a wild ride, let me tell you.
and I loved art, and it is still a passion. And I actually have one of my art pieces in the novel, so you can look forward to seeing that. So
Oh,
I do just
cool.
I just want to encourage people to to be creative and just do that thing that brings life and joy and passion to their spirits.
Okay. So, do you have a Bible verse you'd like to share with us today?
Man, that is a good question. Ooh. Well, I guess I'll just go with Psalm 46:10. It's
Hmm.
an important verse that has gotten me through a difficult time in my life, and that is be still and know that I am God. And so it just goes back to the ideas that I thought about my life. I thought I'm going to be an artist, and nope. Now I'm a writer, and I'm on a podcast talking about a book that's coming out that
Yep.
I have no plans to write, but God's like, here's a story, and I want you to write it, and here it is. So I love
Wow,
God.
that is so cool. So, would you like to pray to close us out in prayer?
Oh, sure. Lord Jesus, thank you for this wonderful time to be with Anne and to just speak about my story and myself. I pray that readers and listeners for this podcast will just take away the wonder and the joy and creativity that we've discussed. And I just thank you for this wonderful time. Amen.
And thank you so much for being on the show. So, I'm going to leave us with a challenge. We challenge you today to go out there and read something inspiring, wait a minute. Yeah, read to get inspired, write something inspiring, and share your creation with the world. For when you've touched one life, you've touched thousands. Thanks for joining us on Inspirational Journeys. And remember, your story matters. Have a blessed day, everyone.